This video shows the process of making the items we gave to the Trenton punk rock flea market for their black swag bags. The first step is pouring. We only have one mold, so this takes some time. First, you pour the mold, then you wait for it to dry until it's dry enough to tap out of the mold gently, then you pour the next one. Next step after drying is cleaning the greenware. I first started with the camera set up a little differently. Then I realized I was getting dust all over my phone, so I had to move it in order to get a better angle and show you more of the process of cleaning the greenware. It's done with a wet sponge and some other tools. Then I move the camera, and this video is 8 times normal speed. It did take a while to pour all of these items because as you use the mold, it soaks up the moisture, and then it takes longer and longer for the item to dry in order to be able to tap it out of the mold safely and start the next one. So, greenware is delicate and it needs to be handled carefully because it's very fragile. The balance is using enough force to clean the greenware and remove any sharp edges or any little hiccups or bumps in the mold that you don't want to be there. So it's pressing hard enough to get the job done, but not too hard so you break it. I was going to show in this video what it looks like when you break the greenware, but I only had a certain number of these poured, and since it took so long to make this many, I did not want to risk damaging any of them and not having any extras. So again, it takes some time. You use the wet sponge to kind of clean up the edges. I use a little bit of water and the tool to clean out the hole where the thumb is supposed to go on the palette. So this can be a very time-consuming process, and this is just 22 of them. That's the first batch that I had set up and ready to go, and you can see the amount of clay dust there from the scraping and the whole cleaning and everything that we have to do. So I did speed this up to lessen the time, but you know, it still takes a long time to clean all of these pieces carefully and not break them. And I'm sorry about the poor camera angle. I don't have a setup for filming yet, but I wanted to document all the step of making these items. So I had to remind myself to keep the palette in view of the camera so that you all could see what was going on. And I could show you all the steps of what I'm doing here. So this goes on for another little while. Carefully cleaning out the holes, scraping the back to make it a little flatter because we need to paint these. And then using the damp sponge to clean up the edges, get rid of any ridges and bumps. Because after you use a mold for a while, it starts to sometimes get a little damaged, and so you have to clean up all those imperfections to make it a nice, smooth, nice looking piece. Okay, even at 8 times normal speed, we still have a ways to go with the first 22 here. So this is what I'm talking about, where I wanted to show the process and how long it takes to get something like this done right. Because we could have just left them sloppy and not neat and painted on them, but we always like to put out our best work, even if it's for something that's free to the people who pick up the black swag bags. So luckily, a lot of these were poured a couple years ago. The first time we signed up for the Trenton Punk Rock Flea Market. So these were dry and waiting near the kiln. I hadn't had time to finish them yet, which is good because I wanted to show this process. And we were going to make 250, I think, the spring of 2020 before everything got shut down. But the first 100 we sent the last time we went to Trenton. And this time we had to make more to get another 100 to add to this event's black swag bags. Okay, so we're almost to the end here, and that's the first 22 done, and you can see how long that took. So then we're going to get this out of there, remove the ones that are done, and again, we got to be careful because they are breakable, so heaven forbid I drop those on the ground, they would all get destroyed. And here's the next tray. Yes, we use pieces of sheetrock to help dry our greenware. And so now we have just 45 more to go. So rather than show the time it took to do all of these, I just did a couple of quick videos. That's the first third done. This is the second third done. And then we have all of them done. And they're looking good. So the next step is loading them into the kiln to fire the greenware. Okay. So this will be me loading them into the kiln. And it just takes me a little bit here to find a good angle to show the inside of the kiln because I'm by myself. To hold the camera. There we go. And then we're gonna speed up a little bit, me putting the items into the kiln. So it's greenware, so they're not going to stick to the shelves. So they can be placed directly on the shelves. You don't have to stilt them, which you would normally have to do with pieces that are glazed, that are already bisque fired and have paint on them and need to be fired again. So these we can put right on the shelf. But when you have a kiln as old as mine is, then you have to watch the shelves because sometimes the glaze drips onto the shelf, and once it's heated up again, it can actually melt and stick onto the greenware. So we want to avoid that. So if you see me point to some spots there, that's where some little bits of glaze is on the shelf. And so then we just place them around those. So then you need stilts to put the next shelf on. And you want to stagger the shelves so there's some space in between them. Oh, this is the cone. Now cone 06 is for painted bisque. That's not what we want. We want cone 04. So this is the good one. And I have a kiln sitter, which is the little prongs you can see on the bottom portion of the screen. And that's where we place the cone. So the cones are stamped with a little number on one side, and you want to make sure that number is facing down so that when the cone sits in the kiln sitter and it starts to melt from the heat, it melts properly and you get it turning off when it's the right temperature. So you can barely see the little imprint of the number there. So then I turn it over and I lift up the little prong and set the cone right in there. So that should be good. So that's all those pieces in the kiln. Now this is unloading the kiln, which I'm doing speeded up a little bit. Now I need 2 hands to take these shelves out of here. So let me put the camera here and we carefully remove the shelves. The top part of my kiln is broken, so I put some extra shelving on there to hold the heat in. So you can see I do have some extra items in there that we loaded on top of the little bisque pallets. So here I am removing the shelf supports. Forget the word for it. So then my sister showed up and I had her hold the camera while I unload the rest of the kiln. Now the kiln takes about 24 hours to heat up and then fully cool down, and you need to make sure that it's close to room temperature before you open it, or you can crack or even break the bisque. So this is a successful firing because the little thing bent at a 90-degree angle. And this is me taking the rest out. So again, if you open the kiln when it's too hot, you can crack and or actually shatter the bisqueware because of the change in temperature. And this is the maneuvers we do to reach the bottom of the kiln to get all the pieces out. And there's your empty kiln. So now the next video will cover the rest of the steps to complete these items.